Welcome to the Next Level Faith podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, best-selling author and life coach for ambitious women of faith. Join me each week to learn more about the strategies, tools, and mindset needed to arise from the overwhelm and create a joyful life you love. To learn how you can work with me further, grab your copy of my best-selling book, Arise and Shine, or check out how you can get your ticket to my next Awake conference or retreat. Head over to juliannekirkland.com. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, because the best version of you begins on your next level of faith.
Hey, welcome back to the Next Level of Faith podcast. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland, and I am so excited you are here with me today. Y'all, I have got to just take a moment and get real with you. I mean, I'm always real with you, but like real, right? So the past few days, I've been doing a lot of podcast interviews, either for this Next Level of Faith podcast or the Women Leaders podcast that I do, being interviewed on podcasts. And my Zoom has been really glitchy the past couple days, which is never any good when that's the way you're communicating with recordings. My dog is eating a Sharpie. Okay, but this is the point, all right? Because what I have always known and have kind of battled with is this reality that we live in and the stories that we have told ourselves to make what we are currently experiencing seem insignificant or not correct. Wrong. Now he's eating scissors. I tell you what, having a dog that's a herding dog is he's just real spunky and he just wants to get into all the things. Anyway, why am I not editing any of that out? Because this is the point of me recording this exact episode. Life happens and people are putting out there so much polished and precise and pristine content. And I am having a lot of trouble relating to that during this season in my life because I'm not that. And I want people, even if it's just through this podcast, to feel safe here, to feel okay and accepted in however they are showing up. I mean, the other day when I was doing a podcast, I have it set up on my Zoom where when somebody comes in for an interview that's been pre-scheduled, it automatically starts recording as soon as I start the call. Well, it didn't. And so I didn't notice it because I'm like locked in with my guest and we're having this incredible conversation. And I mean, I was so enthralled in the conversation and it didn't record any of it. I was so upset afterwards. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is horrible. I haven't even told her yet. Like, I'm trying to process how I'm going to tell her. Do we have to do it again? Should I just do an episode where I explain the conversation? Oh, real world problems. And then I had about a 30 minute gap. And so I ate some lunch and I was like, all right, I'm going to refocus. I'm going to reset. Everything's going to be fine. I went and kind of like clicked around with my Zoom. I restarted my computer and I was like, okay, this is going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. Well, this particular guest I was interviewing, and both of these for the Women Leaders podcast, but this guest I was interviewing, she had actually requested to be on my show through like an agency. And so I never had spoken with her one-to-one. And I don't typically do that. I typically want to have conversed with my guest at some point, even if it's on Instagram or through email, but I can tell so much about people just in the language that they use and how they communicate and what they're actually looking to connect on. And I hadn't done that with her because she was booked through this agency. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. Oh, yes, I was feeling defeated by my podcast earlier in the day, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so I showed up to the call. she shows up to the call and I can't hear her. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't know if it's my Zoom. I don't know if it's her Zoom. So she logs in, logs back, logs out, logs back in, and still not working. I get out of my Zoom, restart my computer again, come back on, and she plugs in different kinds of earphones or whatever, and voila, there we go. So I don't know if it was on my end or her end. Anyway, we got it fixed. So we started getting this conversation, and she's written this new book, and we're talking about the book, and we're talking about, you know, women leaders and the roles that we play and how we really need to be moving into a more integrated identity. And I'm like, woman, this is exactly what my TED Talk's about, you know, integrating our identity and stop separating out who we are to fit into the molds of these various roles that society has said, these are the expectations, these are the rules, this is how you play this game. And so we were having this incredible conversation, and her dog has on this like a jingle bell collar, and he starts itching at his collar. And so like we're in this intense conversation, you know, ding, 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 ding. So like we're both trying to really focus, but we both stop, and she deals with her dog and comes back, and we're like, you know, it's okay. I'm not worried about it at all. This is life. I want people to feel that they can show up as themselves. Like, you're at home. This is something that happens. And so when we get back into the conversation, and then she has this light streaming in, and it's like starting to blind her. And she's wearing a pink shirt, and it's like glowing upon her face. And she's like, I'm turning colors now. It's so episode. And most people would be like, we're going to stop. We're going to re-record. We're going to, you know, we'll reschedule for another day. We just went with it. So then, I'm sorry. This is real life. It's funny. So then we get back in the conversation. She like adjusts her seat so that she's not being blinded by the pink shirt glare and turning different colors. And we're back in the conversation. We're talking about this incredible way that she communicated with her children and was able to connect with them during the pandemic when her son had come home from college, and it was right there at spring break. And so he left to go to spring break. Then they were told that the pandemic was happening. And so the daughter was older, and she was like, no, Mom, he doesn't need to go back to school. And so they talked about how to navigate those really hard conversations well, to where everybody feels heard. And, you know, they use sticky notes, and they divide a wall into fours, and the mom and the dad and the son and the daughter each got to lay like their opinions on the wall. And it was this really good conversation that was practical and tactical, and so much good insight into how to, you know, get through really meaningful conversations in your family without this like high emotion and no, you're wrong, and, you know, all of this. So we're in the middle of this intense conversation, and Hank, my black lab, is laying on the floor beside me during my podcast, and he starts having the worst seizure he's ever had. And so I was like, hold on one second. Hold on. Like, that's not something I can ignore, like the jingle bells. I was like, hold on one second. And I muted my screen, and I just sat there and kept trying to talk to Hank as he was having this horrific seizure. Well, what happens often when he's having these seizures is he can defecate, he can pee, the slobber it's nasty. It's horrible to watch, but the like smell that comes, it's awful. Y'all, it's awful. Well, he did all of those things right here as I'm on this call with this woman. And I just like, part of me wants to break down and cry, because I'm like, this is too much. Like this, how can anybody, what? What am I to do? So, and typically he has the seizure, and then like it takes him a second, and then he kind of comes back, and he can't really see very well. And so he kind of like stumbles, and I get him outside until he can kind of like refocus. And I knew I had to get at least some of the mess, the stink cleaned up, or I was definitely not going to be able to finish this podcast. And so the seizure went on for a lot longer than it ever had before. Maybe it's because of, the situation I was in, and it felt a lot longer, but I really do think it was a lot longer than it had ever been before. And so, he didn't like come back. He just laid there in this like stiff position. And I was like, is this it? Is this going to be when my dog dies? What is happening right now? And so I like left him right there, and I got back on the computer, and I was like, this is the situation. This is what's going on. And right as I was having this conversation with her, he came back too. And I was like, okay, hold on one second. Let me get him outside and I'll come back. Now, you may be thinking, really? Why in the world did you not just be like, hey, we're going to have to... I think it's because we had just had this conversation, this really intense, meaningful conversation about how it's okay and how we need to be presenting more opportunities to express ourselves in reality and not be so polished and perfect. And because of what had happened with her, I felt safe to do that as well. I didn't feel like I was going to be shamed or that I wasn't going to be seen as professional. Because as I've been doing this identity work for my TED Talk, I've really been coming to realization of how often I downplay parts of myself because of expectations others have on me. Whether it's, that I need to tone it down because I'm too loud or I'm too bold or I'm too, whatever. Or you can't show up that way, or how can you do this if you're doing this? And whatever the story is of that example, right? And so I just took a few minutes and I finished out the call. And, I feel like if I'm ever in Silicon Valley, I'm going to call her up and we're going to go have a coffee and have like this tremendous laugh and just really enjoy each other's company. Because it was in that time of just pure vulnerability that we really connected on a deeper level, which I so appreciate. When I got into the business of hosting podcasts, not just this one, but the Women Leaders, it really is about connecting with other people. I don't want it to just be this thing that I do, right? It's not just a role that I have. I want to show up real. I want to connect with people in real time, with real connection, not just to talk about their book, not just to promote their course or, whatever it is. I want real connection with people. And I love that I'm able to do that through podcasting, through this avenue. There have been so many times in my town, because I don't get out much. I just said with air quotes, but if you're not watching on YouTube, you couldn't see. I don't get out much because, and I was talking to Matt the other day, my husband, and I was like, okay, so the quads are 8 now, and they are still not like socially where we want them to be when we go out to dinner and things like that. And I'm like, is it because there's 4 of them at one time? Is it because 3 of them are boys? Is it because, for the first 3 years of their life, we just didn't go out at all because that was really hard. And then, after that, there was the pandemic. So then we had like 3 years where we didn't go anywhere either. So like, is it because they just don't know how to do the things? But so anyway, we were having these conversations, and I couldn't continue to go out into my town and have shallow conversations. I have a really hard time with that. I am not a good one to go and sit in the stands at a swim meet and just like chit chat. If you want to talk to me about your kid and, you, and I can actually connect with you and get to know you better, amazing. I'm all for it. But like, if you want to know about the weather, or you're like, wow, this is a beautiful facility. Like, I don't want to just have random conversations, right? And I think that has cost me some friendships, which I, again, air quoted. And I'm okay with that. And it's so interesting. I run with a dear friend of mine once a week, and she did that Disney half marathon with me. And she is so well known in our town, and she is so great at connecting with people. No matter what, she can find common ground with them like that. And she's fun to be around and all that. And so anytime that I'm running with her or walking with her, she sees somebody she knows. And she's like, oh, hey, and she names them by name, and she can just keep going. I'm like, I can't remember people's names. That's kind of always been something that's been hard for me. I can remember faces, no problem, but I can't remember where that face I know it from or what their name is. So I often just like keep on walking. And so it's been cool for me to experience the other side. But what I am expressing in today is that is who I am, and I'm okay with that. And for a long time, I thought that I had to be some kind of way, that I had to show up like that in order to be her friend. And it's just not true, right? Or when I was doing the podcast interview, that I had to stop it as soon as any kind of unprofessional, air quoted again, behavior started to take place. And that's not true. I think by continuing to post real content for my community, it allows for people to feel like they too can show up real, that they don't have to separate different versions of themselves, because it leads to confusion and anxiety. It can lead to depression. It can lead to all different forms of wreaking mental havoc on ourselves and emotional havoc. And there's enough of that that's done by the world. We really don't need to be doing it to ourselves. And so today's episode was just to sit down and have a real conversation with you, to let you know that it's okay to show up as you are, that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. Like, there is no one else like you, and that's by design. I just got all the Holy Spirit goosebumps, because how beautiful is that? That there's nobody else like you. And that is God's design. He brought you forward in this moment in time for a specific reason, for a specific purpose. And that has been a call on your life since before He weaved you into your mother's womb. And I think by starting to embrace that and see it for its beauty, that being chosen, being set apart is a beautiful thing. And only when we are able to embrace all of who we are, all of who God created us to be, and accept it and love it, are we ever able to reciprocate that to other people. As I've been doing the Women Leaders podcast and talking a lot to women leaders in the corporate arena, There's so much conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically in corporate America. Yes, also in the world, but specifically in corporate America. And I'm always left kind of flabbergasted because I'm like, society is demanding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And at the same time, society is promoting the use of artificial intelligence, the use of appearance altering filters, the, such overload of social comparison and like, oh, this is what the best version of you would look like, right? Or be like. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, no wonder we're confused. No wonder we're in the biggest identity crisis our world has ever seen. Nobody knows how they should show up because there's this undercurrent fear that they're going to be canceled, that they're going to be shamed, that they're going to be pushed aside, that they're going to be forgotten, that they're going to be seen as not significant. It's sad because society isn't linking the two. And the truth is, the only way we will ever be able to build an empathetic and cohesive society that is inclusive and diversified and is all about equity is when we start looking into ourselves and accepting ourselves first. Scripture says, I love because I was first loved. Like that, we know how to love because he is love and he has first loved us and shown us what that love is to be like. And we often find it so easy to love on other people that make us feel some kind of way. But we don't love ourselves, all parts, even the parts we don't talk about. When the truth is, that's the answer. That's the answer to creating a society. And that's why the enemy is on overload, using social media and society and any method he can to get into our psyche and make us feel ashamed of certain parts of us. Because when we feel ashamed, we withdraw. We want to isolate. That's not God's design. That's not what he wants. He wants us to be together. We're his children. When your children fight and you're like, can't you just get along? Same thing. Same thing. And it doesn't matter if you have one child that believes one thing and one child that believes another thing and they argue against the thing. You love your children. You want them to agree. You want them to come together. But at the end of the day, you want them to freaking love each other. Period. It's so simple. Yet it's not easy. And so I invite you to be a part of the conversation where you can fully express yourself without fear of condemnation, because there is no condemnation in Christ. It's like we need more of that. Where's that language? I'm going here, but I'm not going here. I'm going to go here a little. But there's all this, Bud Light stuff happening where they hired, and I don't even know the depth of the story, so I can't even share very well on it, but they hired a transgender spokesperson. And now a lot of their audience convictions do not agree with that. And so they are rallying, rioting, filming videos of shooting Bud Light cans and Bud Light boxes. That's not the point. That is such a distraction to the point. And it's easy to get riled up by it because there's some, funny things that are coming out of it that people are doing parodies on and stuff like that. And it can be comical when you're able to like withdraw from it and see it for what it is. But the truth is, we have to accept who we are. We have to love who we are and how God made us, and know that other people are uniquely designed as well. And we're not going to always agree with them. And there are some things that we are absolutely allowed to say no to. I don't want that in my sphere. I don't want that in my home. And that is our right. And that is a privilege. And I'm grateful that we were able to do that. But the hatred, the immediate cancellation of people that you don't agree with, it's just the way the enemy continues to win. It's just the way the enemy continues to shove that shame and condemnation and those stories into our lives. And so while we might be thinking, oh, we're protecting our children, are we? Now, if we're doing it in a way, again, to not allow things in our home and stuff like that, I understand. And I do the same thing. But I'm also willing to have the hard, nuanced conversations. And that, I think, is a part that's missing a lot, is we jump on bandwagons very quickly. And that's not the desire of the Father. And so I had no intention to go here today. Sure didn't. Nope. But I'm keeping it real. And that's what the Holy Spirit is bringing up in me. And so I'm bringing it up to you. I think so often we feel like we can't speak because we don't have all the answers, or we might not have the right answer, or we might be proven wrong, or we might be looked down upon for our views. I think that's a lot of why people don't speak. And I really am on mission to help people speak up and speak out and to take their message to the world, because I know that God has a unique and specific purpose for every single person on this planet. And if I, in any shape, way, or form, can help that person get their message out clearly and with confidence and without feeling condemned, yeah, that's what I'm all about. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I just wanted to share that this is a safe place for you to be real, for you to feel seen and heard and understood, and to know that it's okay to struggle. It's okay to question. It's okay to seek deeper truth. All those are really important. And you're not a bad Christian, I air quoted again. You're not a bad believer if you struggle, if you toss over, I don't understand, Lord, like, why is this happening? And what does this mean? And we're human. And that's why he has given us the promise that when we take our thoughts captive to Christ, and by renewing our mind, we are able to align with his will. And that is where freedom is. That is where joy is. That is where peace is. That is where comfort is. And it's like, okay, everybody wants protocols for how to live life. There you go. Take your thoughts captive to Christ. Renew your mind daily, my friend. That's where it is. And it's a practice, and it has to happen. And that's why he's so clear in his word It's the renewing of your mind, because the battle that we fight is not the people around us. It's so much bigger than that, my friends. We are fighting against spiritual principalities, demons, and it is huge. And I know people get weird about that, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to talk about spirits and demons. It's cool, princess. If you don't want to talk about them, that doesn't mean that they're not there. Again, there's no shame in that. That sounded a little judgy. It's not. I get it. I used to be the same way. But I now understand that just because I don't want to believe in something or think of it as real or true or valid doesn't mean that it's not there, right? Like I can believe that gravity doesn't exist, but if I jump off a roof, I'm going to fall to the ground. And I just want to encourage you that even if it's just today, that you take one step forward in renewing your mind and just asking God and sitting with him for a moment and asking him, Lord, how do you want me to show up in this moment? How do you want me to show up today? How do you want me to love others? How do you want me to see others how you see others? Lord, open my eyes to that. Open my ears to that. Show me opportunities, Lord, to love people well. That's doing his work. That's doing his will. And it's in all of us. We're all built with that capability because we are made in his image. So I love you, my friends. I know this conversation was kind of all over the place, but it's real. It's the real. And I appreciate you listening and sharing with friends, and to know that you're always welcome here. And I love you. And that's a true statement. And I want the best for you. And I want God's best for you. So remember, the best version of you begins on your next level of faith. Bye for now.